My name is Vanessa Cole Pritchard. I am 39 years old, and I found out at a mortgage closing, not from a phone call, not from a letter, not from a fraud alert that arrived 3 months too late and $2,000 too short. At a mortgage closing, a Tuesday afternoon in October. Conference room, title company, downtown Columbus, Ohio. Me in a blazer I had pressed the night before. A folder of documents I had spent 3 weeks organizing. A pen I had carried in my bag specifically for this moment. Because buying your first home is the kind of moment you prepare for. And the loan officer slid a document across the table, looked at my ID, looked at the document, looked at my ID again, and said, "Miss Cole, I need to ask you something. Have you recently opened a credit account in Dayton?" I said, "No." "Have you applied for a personal loan in the last 18 months? I said, "No." "Do you have a family member who might have access to your personal information?" And right there, in a conference room downtown, in a blazer I had pressed the night before, holding a pen I had brought specifically for this moment, I understood. Not everything. Not yet. But enough. The loan officer excused himself. The closing paused. I sat at the table alone, and I pulled out my phone, and I opened my credit report, and I looked at what 3 years of my sister's decisions looked like. On my name. 7 accounts, 4 credit cards, 2 personal loans, 1 retail line of credit, combined balance, $34,700, combined delinquency history, 18 months of late payments, 3 accounts in collections, 1 judgment filed in my name in Montgomery County, Ohio, that I had never once set foot in. I sat at that table for 11 minutes before the loan officer came back. The mortgage did not close that day, but I had every statement. Before we go any further, if you are new here, please take a second to like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. And drop a comment telling me where you are watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one. Welcome to the family ledger. Now let me take you back to the beginning. My name before I married was Vanessa Cole. I grew up in Springfield, Ohio. Population just under 60,000. A mid-sized city that had seen better decades. The kind of place where the downtown had good bones, and the neighborhoods had long memories, and everyone's family had been there long enough to have a version of the same story. My father, Dennis, drove long haul for a regional freight company for 19 years. Gone Monday through Friday. Home on weekends. Quiet. Tired. The kind of tired that accumulates over years of highway miles and motel rooms and meals eaten alone at truck stop counters. He was not absent in the way that absent fathers are absent. He was present when he was there. He was just not there very often. My mother, Lorraine, held everything together in the way that mothers of absent fathers learn to hold everything together, completely, without acknowledgement, and with a particular brand of exhaustion that she called just being a mother and everyone else called remarkable. My sister's name is Daisha, 3 years younger than me. Smaller. Louder in the way that smaller people sometimes are. As if volume compensates for the space they do not naturally occupy. She had my mother's laugh and my father's stubbornness and a particular gift for making you feel responsible for her outcomes, even when her outcomes had nothing to do with your decisions. I loved her. I want to be clear about that. The way I have been clear in every story I have told. Because the people who betray us are not always people we do not love. Sometimes they are exactly the people we love most. That is what makes the folder necessary. I graduated from Ohio State with a degree in business administration, finance concentration, and took a position at a regional bank in Columbus at 22. Not glamorous. Not the Chicago consulting firm or the Atlanta law practice. A regional bank. Loan processing. learning the mechanics of credit and risk and the particular language of financial documentation from the inside. It was exactly the right place to learn what I was about to need to know. By 26, I was a credit analyst. By 28, a senior analyst. By 30, I had moved to a larger institution downtown, a VP title, a team of 4, and the kind of salary that made saving for a down payment a realistic 3-year project rather than a theoretical one. I was meticulous about my credit, the way you are meticulous about something when you have spent your career watching what happens to people who are not. I checked my credit report every 6 months. I had no late payments in 9 years. My score, the morning of the mortgage closing, or what I believed it to be, 791. What the loan officer was looking at, 634. 157 points. 3 years of Deschamps' decisions on my name had cost me 157 points. Let me tell you about Deschamps before I tell you what she did. Because what she did lives inside who she was. And who she was not a villain, not a schemer. Not a woman who sat down one evening and thought, I will steal my sister's identity and destroy her credit and see how long it takes her to notice. Deja was a woman who had never quite found her footing. 2 years of community college, withdrawn before the associate's degree. 3 jobs in 4 years. A call center. A retail manager position that ended badly. A medical billing office she left after 6 months because the commute was too far. A boyfriend at 23 who took her savings account and her confidence when he left. A move to Dayton at 25 to start over, which is a real and valid thing to do. But which in Deja's case meant moving to a city where she knew no one, with no job lined up, and the particular optimism of a person who has not yet learned that starting over requires a plan and not just a location. She called me when she got to Dayton. She needed help. She always needed help. That was the constant in our relationship. The variable was only what kind. I sent money. I always sent money. Not enormous amounts, but consistent ones. The way you make consistent small contributions to something you believe will eventually stabilize. I was waiting for Deja to stabilize. What I did not know was that while I was waiting, she had found a faster solution. The first account was opened 22 months before the mortgage closing. I know this now. I did not know it then. A credit card. $2,500 limit. A major issuer. Applied for online. My social security number. My date of birth. My mother's maiden name as a security question answer. Because Deja knew all of those things, the way sisters know things, not because they were given them, because they were simply always known. The card was mailed to an address in Dayton I had never lived at. The first charge, $340. A furniture store I did not know. The second account, a personal loan, $8,000. Opened 4 months later. Same information. Different lender. Dayton address. I did not know. By month 8. 3 credit cards and 1 loan. By month 14. 2 more cards. By month 18. The retail line of credit. By month 22. The first account went to collections. I did not know any of it. Because I was checking my credit report every 6 months. The way responsible people do. And I was pulling it from the wrong bureau. This is the part that took me the longest to forgive myself for. Not that it happened, but that it happened in the gap between the reports I was pulling and the bureau Deja's accounts were reporting to. I was checking one. She was opening accounts that reported to another. 157 points. 3 years. I did not know. The mortgage closing paused at 2:14 in the afternoon. The loan officer came back with his manager, a woman named Carla. 50-something. Calm. The particular calm of someone who has navigated fraud situations before and knows that the first thing the person across the table needs is not information. It is a minute. Miss Cole, Carla said. Take whatever time you need. We are not going anywhere. I looked at my credit report on my phone for a long time. 7 accounts. None of them mine. All of them. My name. I called my husband Marcus from the conference room. He answered on the second ring. I told him in 9 sentences. The way I tell Marcus everything. Without softening the edges. Because Marcus is the kind of man who needs the full picture before he can be useful. And I always need him to be useful. He said. I am on my way. Then I called my mother. Lorraine answered on the third ring. The particular answer of a woman who has been waiting for a call she did not know was coming but somehow sensed was overdue. I told her what I had found. The silence on her end lasted 7 seconds. Vanessa, she said. Her voice was very careful. How long ago did the first account open? I told her. Another silence. Baby, she said, and then nothing else for a moment. The particular nothing of a mother who knows something she is not sure she is allowed to say yet. Mom, I said. Do you know something? The silence lasted 4 more seconds. I think, she said, very carefully. You need to talk to Dayshaw? I hung up. I sat at the conference room table, in the blazer I had pressed the night before, holding the pen I had brought for a different kind of signing, and I understood that my mother had known. Not everything. Not the full scope of 7 accounts and $34,700 and a judgment in Montgomery County, but something. Some version of it. Some piece that she had been holding. Hoping it would resolve itself. The way Lorraine held most things. Quietly. Hoping they would resolve. They had not resolved. They had compounded. Marcus arrived at the title company at 3:15. He sat down beside me. Did not say anything for a full minute. Just read the credit report over my shoulder. Line by line. The way he reads everything that matters. Then he said, What do you need right now? I said. I need to go home. I need to pull every bureau. I need the complete picture before I make any calls. He nodded. Okay. He stood up. Shook Carla's hand. Told her we would be in touch. And drove me home. That evening. At the kitchen table. I pulled all 3 credit bureaus. Full reports. Every account. Every inquiry. Every delinquency. Every address on file. 3 hours. By 10 o'clock. I had the complete picture. 7 fraudulent accounts. $34,700 in combined balances. 18 months of late payment history across 4 accounts. 3 accounts in active collections. 1 civil judgment. $4,200. Filed in Montgomery County, Ohio, by a lender I had never heard of, in my name, for a debt I had never incurred, and a credit score that had fallen from 791 to 634 over 36 months. So gradually. So incrementally that my 6-month checks had registered the decline as normal fluctuation. The kind that happens when utilization shifts or an inquiry lands. Not the kind that happens when someone is systematically opening accounts in your name in a city 2 hours away. I built a spreadsheet. Of course I did. I am a credit analyst. Spreadsheets are how I process the world. Account by account. Open date. Balance. Payment history. Delinquency status. Bureau reported to. Address on file. Every account. The same date and address. Every application. The same device fingerprint, which I would not know until later, but which the fraud investigators would find immediately. Every security question answer. My mother's maiden name. I printed the spreadsheet, dated it, put it in a folder. Then I opened a new tab, and I started a documentation file. Not because I had planned this, because I was a credit analyst, and this was evidence. And evidence belongs in a file. Labeled. Dated. Organized. The way my father organized his freight manifests. The way my mother organized the household bills. The way I had organized everything in my professional life for 17 years. Item 1. Credit report pull. 3 bureaus. Full reports. 7 fraudulent accounts.
Complete delinquency history. Date. Red pen. Item 2. Spreadsheet. Account by account breakdown. Open dates. Balances. Addresses on file. Date. Red pen. I did not call Deja that night. I wanted the complete picture first. Marcus made dinner. I ate without tasting it. He cleaned up without being asked and then sat across from me at the kitchen table and said, "When are you going to call her?" "Tomorrow," I said, "after I file the fraud report." He nodded. "Do you want me there when you call?" "No," I said. "This is mine." He understood. He always understands the difference between the things that need a witness and the things that need to be done alone. I filed the fraud report the next morning. FTC first, identitytheft.gov, the official federal process, a report number, a recovery plan, step by step. Exactly the bureaucratic scaffolding you build when someone has spent 3 years dismantling yours. Then the credit bureaus. Fraud alerts placed on all 3. Dispute letters initiated for all 7 accounts. Certified mail. Return receipt requested. Because I was a credit analyst and I knew that certified mail with return receipt is not a formality. It is documentation. Item 3. FTC fraud report. Report number documented. Date filed. Red pen. Items 4 through 10. Dispute letters. 1 per fraudulent account. 7 total. Certified mail tracking numbers recorded. Date sent. Red pen. Then I called the lender who had filed the civil judgment in Montgomery County. That call lasted 41 minutes. I was transferred 4 times. I spoke to a fraud specialist named Kevin, who sounded 23 years old and was more competent than his voice suggested. He pulled the original application. He confirmed the date and address. He confirmed the device used for the online application. He asked if I had a suspect. I said, "I do." He asked if I wanted to file a police report in addition to the fraud claim. I paused. "Not yet," I said. "I need to have a conversation first." Kevin noted it, said the fraud claim would proceed regardless, said the judgment would be vacated pending investigation, said it could take 60 to 90 days. I said, "I understand timelines." He almost laughed. Almost. Item 11. Lender call. Civil judgment. Fraud claim filed. Judgment vacated pending investigation. Kevin. Fraud specialist. Direct line documented. Date. Red pen. I called Deja at 2 in the afternoon. She answered on the 4th ring. Her voice was the particular brightness of someone who does not yet know what the call is about. The easiness of a person moving through an ordinary Tuesday. "Nessa?" "Hey." "What's up?" I said, "Deja, I need to talk to you about something serious. I need you to listen to me without interrupting until I am finished. Can you do that?" A pause. The brightness dimmed slightly. "Yeah. Of course. What's wrong?" "My mortgage closing was yesterday," I said. "It did not close. The loan officer found 7 accounts on my credit report that I did not open. 4 credit cards. 2 personal loans. 1 retail line of credit. All opened in the last 3 years. All reporting to a date and address." Silence. "Deja," I said, "I need you to tell me the truth." The silence lasted 11 seconds. I counted. Then, very quietly, barely above a breath, she said, "Vanessa, I am so sorry." "Not. That wasn't me." "Not. I don't know what you're talking about." "Not. Are you sure it wasn't fraud?" "I am so sorry." Which meant she had been waiting for this call. Which meant some part of her had known, for 3 years, that this call was coming, and had been living in the space between the things she had done and the moment she would have to account for it. "Tell me," I said. She told me. It had started, she said, with the first credit card. She had needed furniture. She had just moved to Dayton. She had no credit history that would qualify her for a card on her own. And she had told herself. She said this part very quietly. She had told herself that she would pay it off before I ever noticed. That it would be a short-term thing. That she would fix it before it became real. It became real. The second card. She needed to cover the first one's minimum payment. The loan. She needed to cover both cards. The retail line. She needed to cover the loan. The cycle that every credit analyst knows, the cascade. One account propping up another. The whole structure getting heavier. Until the first one collapsed, went to collections. And the collapse started moving through the rest of them. 18 months of late payments. 3 collections. 1 judgment. And a sister. 2 hours away. Whose credit score was falling 1 point at a time, without knowing why. Checking the wrong bureau. Going about her life. Pressing blazers for closings that would not happen. How much? I said. She said. What? How much of it did you spend? Total. Across all 7 accounts. A long pause. About 22,000, she said. The rest is fees and interest. I wrote it down. Item 12. Phone call. Deja. Confession. Voluntary. Unprompted denial. Estimated personal spending. $22,000. Remainder. Fees and interest. Date. Time. Duration. 19 minutes. Red pen. Then I said, Deja, I need you to understand what you have done. Not to my credit score. Not to my mortgage. To me. She said, I do not think you do. I thought, not completely. So I'm going to tell you. And I told her. The mortgage that did not close. The $34,700 on my credit report. The judgment in Montgomery County in my name for a debt I never incurred. The 157 points. The 9 years of perfect payment history that her 3 years had partially dismantled. The fraud reports filed that morning. The dispute letter sent certified mail. The FTC report with a case number. And then, I have a documentation file, I said. Every account. Every statement. Every date. Every certified mail tracking number. Every phone call logged. I am a credit analyst. This is what I do. And if this does not get resolved completely, every account disputed, every judgment vacated, every delinquency removed, I will file a police report. And the documentation I have will make the case very straightforward. The silence on Deja's end was the longest one of the call. Then, are you going to file one anyway? I said. That depends on you. I want to stop here for a moment, because I know what some of you are thinking. You are thinking, why didn't she file immediately? Why give her sister the chance to cooperate before involving law enforcement? And I want to answer that honestly, because Deja was not a stranger. She was the person I had grown up with, the person I had sent money to for years, the person whose stability I had been waiting for, and whose instability I had been quietly subsidizing, in the way that older siblings subsidize younger ones, not always wisely, but always with the particular hope that this time, this payment, this month, things will begin to hold. I did not file immediately because I needed to know, first, whether she understood what she had done, whether the confession was real, whether the cooperation would follow. If it did not, the documentation file was ready. It had always been ready. Deja cooperated. Fully. Immediately. Without negotiation. She called every lender. She provided written statements, notarized, confirming that the accounts had been opened fraudulently using my identity without my knowledge or consent. She provided the fraud investigators with the device information, the applications, everything they asked for. She did not make me chase her. That mattered. Not enough to undo what she had done, but enough to matter. The dispute process took 4 months. 4 months of certified mail and follow-up calls and credit bureau escalations, and one very patient fraud specialist named Kevin in Montgomery County who vacated the judgment in 63 days. 11 days ahead of schedule, and called me personally to confirm it. I added every step to the documentation file. Items 13 through 31. Dispute confirmations, account by account. Certified mail return receipts. Bureau responses. Judgment vacation confirmation. Kevin's call.
Date. Time. Outcome. Red pen. Dated. By month 4, all 7 accounts removed. By month 5. Credit score. 784, not 791. 7 points short of where I had started. The inquiry footprint from the fraudulent applications would take another 12 months to age off completely. 7 points. 3 years of Dacia's decisions. Fully remediated. Left a 7-point scar. I could live with 7 points. The mortgage closed on a Thursday in February. Different conference room. Same title company. Same Carla. Who had remembered me. Who shook my hand when I walked in and said, "I am so glad you are back." I sat at the table in a different blazer. Not pressed the night before. Just a blazer. Because this time I was not performing readiness. I was simply ready. Marcus sat beside me, his hand on mine under the table. Steady. Warm. The same hand that had been beside me at the kitchen table when I pulled the 3 bureaus, and at the fraud investigator's office, and at every step of the 4 months between the closing that had not happened and the one that was happening now. The loan officer slid the documents across. I signed my name. Vanessa Cole Pritchard. My name. On documents that belonged to me. For a house that we had earned. I held the pen for an extra second after the last signature. Then I put it in my bag, because it was a good pen, and I had earned the right to keep it. Deja and I did not speak for 3 months after the confession call. Not from hostility. From necessity. I needed the distance. The way you need distance from something that has burned you. Not because you are angry, but because proximity to the heat before you have finished healing does not help the healing. She texted once in month 2. 2 sentences. I know you are not ready. I will be here when you are. I did not reply, but I did not delete it either. In month 4. After the mortgage closed. After the last account was removed. After the credit score had settled at 784 and the documentation file was complete and closed. I called her. She answered on the first ring, which told me she had been waiting. We talked for an hour and 40 minutes. The longest conversation we had ever had. Longer than any of the childhood conversations about school or boys or what we wanted to be. Because this conversation had the weight of all of those underneath it and something heavier on top. She told me more than I had asked for on the first call. She told me about the boyfriend who had taken her savings. About the Dayton apartment that had felt like freedom and turned into isolation. About the first credit card. The way she had told herself it was temporary. And how temporary had compounded. And how the compounding had happened so gradually that she had learned to not look at it. The way you learn not to look at a wound that is not healing. Because looking makes it real, she said. I kept thinking, I will fix it before you find out. And then fixing it got harder. And finding out got closer. And I did not fix it. I said, I know. I did not think about what it would cost you, she said. I thought about what I needed. I did not think about your closing. I know, I said again. That is the part I am most sorry about, she said. Not the accounts, not the money. The closing. You had worked for that for 3 years. And I took it from you on a Tuesday afternoon without even knowing I was doing it. I sat with that for a moment. She was right. That was the part that had cost the most. Not the 4 months. Not the fraud reports. Not Kevin and the judgment and the certified mail. The blazer I had pressed the night before. The pen I had brought for a different kind of signing. The 11 minutes I had sat alone at that conference room table, understanding what 3 years of not looking had cost both of us. It closed in February, I said. We are in the house. A pause. Can I see it sometime? She said. I thought about the documentation file. 31 items. 4 months. Complete. Closed. Yes, I said. When you are in Columbus. Call me. She called 2 months later. She stood in the kitchen of the house that had almost not happened. And she looked at the countertops I had spent 3 weeks choosing. And the window above the sink that looked onto the backyard. And the table Marcus and I had bought the week we moved in. And she said, "Nessa, it is beautiful." I said, "I know." We had tea. We talked about her new job, a financial counseling nonprofit in Dayton. Of all the things, helping people navigate debt and credit recovery. Because sometimes the people who understand the cost of a thing most completely are the ones who caused it. She had found her footing. Finally, the way I had always been waiting for her to. Just not the way I had expected. The documentation file sits in the fireproof safe. 31 items, 4 months, 7 accounts, 1 closed mortgage, 1 scar, 7 points, aging off by next spring. I do not open it often. I do not need to, but I kept it. Because documentation is not about punishment. It is not about holding something over someone's head for the rest of your shared history. It is about the record of what actually happened. And what actually happened was that my sister made a decision that cost me 157 points and a Tuesday afternoon and 4 months of certified mail and 11 minutes alone at a conference room table in a blazer I had pressed the night before. And what also happened was that when I found out, I had every statement, every date, every tracking number, every account, every piece of evidence assembled in a file that made the recovery possible. Not because the documentation created the outcome, but because the documentation gave me something to stand on while everything else was uncertain. That is what records are for. Not revenge. Not punishment. Not the satisfaction of being right. Standing on. Here on the family ledger. This is what we believe. You cannot always prevent what happens to you, but you can document it. You can build the file. You can pull all 3 bureaus and send the certified mail and call Kevin in fraud investigation and keep the pen you brought for a different kind of signing. Because you earned that pen and the house and the closing and every point that comes back. Keep the receipts. Know the numbers. And when the moment comes, let the documentation stand for itself. If someone has ever cost you something you had spent years building, drop it in the comments. Tell me your version. Because I know you are out there. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment. Hit subscribe. And I will see you in the next one.